Welcome everyone to another episode of Parenting in the Far North. I am your host, Ariane Aramburo. Today's guest is Gianna Giusti. She's been an educator in Alaska for the past 16 years, and for the past 11 years, she has served as the K-5 school counselor at Herman Hutchins Elementary School in Valdez, Alaska. She's a passionate advocate for community wellness, and in 2023 was honored, and she says humbled, to receive the AKSCA School Counselor of the Year Award. Please welcome to the podcast today, Gianna, Miss Gianna, as I would probably say, because you deal with kids and counselors. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk with you. Before we kind of dive into some of the questions and topics, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you from Alaska, moved here, and how did you end up in Valdez?
I'm actually originally from San Francisco Bay Area, and I followed someone up here, left them and stayed. And I finished my degrees at the University of Alaska Southeast, and then I got a job in Valdez teaching, and I've been in Valdez ever since. I've been in Alaska now for over 20 years, which is
you're an
pretty
Alaskan.
Amazing to me. I am an Alaskan now, and I am proud of it. I still have to go back home for my city fix twice a year. I'm the proud mom of a 12-year-old boy. He's going to be 13 next week, which is another I can't believe type feeling. And I am also an endurance athlete. So I really like to model grit and perseverance for all of the kids that I work with.
I love that. I've never been to Valdez. It is definitely on my bucket list, so we will have to connect when I finally make my way down there.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get into it. We'll just start off. You've worked with kids obviously for a very long time. What do you see them struggling with the most when it comes to those, when we tell them those big emotions?
Yeah, ever since 2020, I've really seen a huge uptake in anxiety. And this has been something that I've been really supporting families with in the last 5 years. I think a lot of what is happening is we as adults are anxious. We lost control of everything. And we have some unresolved trauma from that. And we wanted to get so quickly back to normal that we forgot we have these little people who are looking up to us. So I feel like a lot of our energy is taken up with our kids, and they're seeing our anxiety rise. And that's really what I've seen in the past 5 years. And it's a lot of what I've been dealing with. A lot of our kids are anxious.
What would you say that's kind of going through some of these kids' brains when they're having the quote unquote meltdown?
So one of the things that I teach kids that they are having an amygdala hijack. So I do a hand model and I go, okay, this is your brain. This is your feelings part of your brain. This is your thinking part of your brain. When you lose control of a strong emotion, you flip your lid and your amygdala takes over, and you can't make a decision because your thinking part of the brain is not connected to your feelings part of the brain. So I really teach kids how to stop, give a name to how they're feeling, and calm down strategies so they can help cope with the anxiety or strong emotion that they're dealing with.
And, a lot of folks talk about, self-regulation. What does that look like for you and for your kiddos, and how do you help them, self-regulate?
Right. I think an important thing for adults and kids is to name it, to tame it. If you can't name exactly what you're feeling, then you don't know how to help support yourself for that feeling. I really teach a lot about emotional literacy because there's a lot more than just happy, sad, mad, glad. We need to know kind of the ins and outs of those feelings so we know how to cope with them, because being overwhelmed is a lot different than being sad. So giving the kids those tools to name how they're feeling really helps in self-regulation. And it helps with adults too. This is something I wish I knew as a parent when I started parenting. And it really helps kids to name how they're feeling.
I love these tips. I'm going to use it because I have a 9-year-old who's about to be 10. What are some other calming strategies that parents can use in the moment when their child is kind of overwhelmed, if they're maybe just getting into this and trying to figure out those big emotions and they don't really have quite the words of what to say, because you deal with these kids day in and day out. So what advice are you giving to parents that are kind of just coming into this for the first time and don't know really what to do or how to steer their kids in that direction?
Yeah. Oh, I really appreciate this question because I think it's important to practice when you're not in that moment. Because what happens when you're in that moment, the last thing you want someone to say is calm down, right? I know if someone tells me to calm down when I'm feeling upset, it kind of makes me more upset. So when you're practicing, when you're calm, like making it a part of bedtime routine, making it a part of dinner conversation is going to help more when you're in that moment of dealing with a strong emotion. So when you're practicing breathing exercises before you go to bed at night, I know my son and I, when he was younger, we would have a bedtime routine. We'd read a story, we'd talk about his day, and then, hey, bud, let's practice belly breathing. Put your hand on your stomach, take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out, and then discuss that that's something you can do if you need a break and you need to calm down. So when you're practicing in that moment of calm, it's a muscle memory when you need it, when your brain isn't connecting because you flipped your lid.
And for parents, what would you share with them if they're feeling overwhelmed and it's them and they don't want to
Mhm.
maybe lash out or snap at their kid, or maybe they do? How do they, kind of self-regulate themselves?
Oh yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? I know as a parent, I definitely lashed out. Brush your teeth, get in the
Hmm.
car. Oh, and that's how my guy's starting his day. I think it's important for us to step back and realize, ooh, maybe I need to catch myself. I need to figure out what triggers me, and I need to work on how I remain calm in those situations because we all know that when someone's aggressive, aggression's going to match with that, right? So it's really hard to yell at someone who's being calm. And I'll tell you
Hmm.
what, it is hard to remain calm sometimes, right? Um, I have an almost teenager, and it's not easy. But it's really important to know what triggers us so we can practice when we're calm. So when we're in that moment, we don't explode. Does that make sense?
It does. And, with this
Mhm.
for like kids' age ranges, what are we talking about when you're kind of explaining it to
Mm.
them? I mean, obviously the younger, you got to kind of dumb it down a little bit more and keep it simple. But when and how much should parents be sharing with their kiddos about some of these practices?
Mhm. I think, early childhood, I mean, I wish I knew some of these techniques when I was in kindergarten. One of the reasons why I'm a school counselor is because I wanna be the adult I needed when I was in elementary school. And I think it's important for them to have that social emotional awareness at a young age because they well, I'll go back a little. So when you're 3 and 4, you don't necessarily have the words to explain how you're feeling, and
Hmm.
that's why we see tantrums and outbursts because they don't know how to explain how they're feeling. So if they're giving these tools at a young age, it's gonna be easier for them as they go on and grow up, and I would rather work with a 5-year-old on emotional regulation than, supporting a 16-year-old who's have never had those conversations before because that's gonna look a lot different and it's going to be a lot more difficult to support that 16-year-old than it is a 5-year-old.
And when you say big emotions, what are some of those terms that you're using to describe? Because, the kids know, like, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm frustrated. But
Mhm.
what about like annoyed or irritated,
Oh,
scared?
yeah.
Are kids even young, your kids that you're dealing with, are they kind of expressing some of those as well?
They do. The more they hear it, the more they understand it. And their brains are sponges. I mean, when you think about how much a kid develops between the age of 0 and 5, it's astronomical. They walk,
Hmm.
they talk, they learn how to play, how to eat. I mean, I think about my life in the last 5 years, and it's like that's their whole lifetime. They have just developed so much. So they do understand those feelings. And I also teach that it's not just the negative feelings.
Hmm.
They know Miss Giusti gets a little too hyper, so that could be my strong emotion. How do I need to calm down? So it could also be if you're too excited or too rambunctious. That's also a strong emotion or a strong feeling that you might need to say stop, name it, tame it, and take a breath. Maybe you need to take a walk, grab a drink of water, and calm down. Yeah, kids enjoy calling out Miss Juicy on her emotions as well.
And it's May. It's the time for folks to get outside. I imagine walking and kind of
Mhm.
moving your body, getting off from the iPads and things like that is helpful for
Yeah.
both parent and kiddo. For you, you're an endurance athlete. How has being an
Mhm.
endurance athlete helped you in your role of what you do and kind of dealing with parents and kiddos with this stuff?
Mhm. tremendously. It helps me process throughout my day. Um, it helps me escape from technology as well. I think technology is really hard to get sucked into, especially in those long, dark days that we have here and when the weather's not that great. Staying active is something I need to do so I know I can best serve the students and the families that I'm working with. I think it's important to move our bodies. It's important to keep ourselves hydrated. It's important to get outside. I think nature is very healing. And we live in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And just to take that all in is really important for our mental wellness.
And talk about, we all have it, mom guilt. That's something I know I have, I struggle
Mm.
with. And I have
Oh, yeah.
realized kids are completely resilient. My daughter is amazing. She's awesome. But how do you kind of navigate around that? I mean, even for you, do you have any personal experience, or you have a son? Where does that come
Mhm.
from?
Yeah, I think it comes from maybe things that we've experienced in our life. Um, I think it comes from what society tells us. I think it's really important that you know you have permission to do what's right for your family and for your child. All of our children are different. I think comparison is the thief of joy. And
Hmm.
when we compare ourselves to what we see society or the media telling us what to do, it's going to really, it has an impact on how we think what's right and what's wrong. I think we're constantly told by, you know, uh, Instagram influencers what we should be doing as a parent. And that's hard to not compare yourself to. And I think a lot of guilt comes from that. We need to give ourselves permission to know we're doing what's right for our child and for us and whatever your family dynamic is.
I'm going to back it up for you. I want to hear
Mhm.
just about your experience as being a mom. What was your experience like becoming a mom and just navigating now? You said he's 12. You're right on the
Yeah,
cusp of that of teen.
I know. I'm scared. But you know, I did not have the TLC birth story that I thought I was going to have. Um, my son was a preemie, so it was very traumatic for me.
Mm,
We were in the NICU for 3 weeks,
mm,
and looking back, I was in a state of shock, and I didn't know what to do. I never had a younger sibling that was young enough that I had to change diapers.
mm.
My son was literally the first diaper I ever changed in my life
Wow.
in the NICU with tubes on him, and it was so overwhelming, and it was difficult. I also had some postpartum depression,
Hmm.
because my whole life changed. I had him when I was 31, so I had my life set. I had a career, and it was a really big adjustment for me, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And I really had to lean on my people. I had to know who my circle were. I had to know who I could talk to because it was scary for me. It was a big adjustment. And what's really difficult for me is I've worked with kids for so long.
Hmm.
I had that guilt of why is this not coming easy to me?
Yeah.
and and that was hard, but I had a really good support system. I have educators as my support system. I have a lot of families who have experience, and I had my grandmother came up, and she helped me for 3 weeks
Mm.
because I remember when I got home from NICU, I sat on the floor holding this new little baby, just bawling because I was so overwhelmed, and I really had to lean on my people.
That sounds eerily similar to my story, which is how this kind of
Mhm,
podcast was born. I too went through
mhm,
postpartum depression after having my daughter. I was 33, and I'm
mhm.
the morning news anchor, and I engage from people. I'm like full of life. I'm waking folks up in the morning, and then I had my daughter, and everything was great
Mhm.
pregnancy. I did struggle with breastfeeding, but it was when I got home too. I sat down once all the nurses went away,
Yeah,
and the 24/7 catering, and two, just kind of bawled my eyes out because I was just like,
yeah.
what is happening? And it's a real and it's a valid emotion. And encourage, and I love, hearing women's stories. And we
Mhm.
did a whole special on it, and, the spectrum of it, as you can imagine. Kind of piggybacking and going into the next question of, I'm sure you deal
Mhm.
with a lot of parents too, maybe some parents that maybe
Mhm.
have some shame or guilt around maybe thinking that their child isn't emotionally healthy, or, has these big
Mhm.
emotions, they don't know what to do or how to ask. How do you
Mhm.
work with folks, or what advice do you have for parents that are maybe a little bit hesitant to speak up and ask for help, whether it's for
Mhm.
themselves or for
Yeah.
their kids?
Yeah, because it's scary, right? It's kind of uncharted territory, and I think making the dialogue that mental wellness is okay to talk about is really important. That's why, like I mentioned, it's okay to talk about it with younger children. We need to be able to be vulnerable. We need to ask for help, and we need to make sure that it's okay. And sometimes there's things that are out of our control, right? Sometimes there's things that we can't see that's going on. I always recommend going to your pediatrician or family practitioner, getting a wellness child checkup, getting vitamin deficiencies checked out. I think it's really important to know that to raise a child, it takes a team, it takes a tribe, and we don't have all the answers. We can't see inside of our
Hmm.
brains to know what's going on. I think it's important to know the resources we have and reach out and to understand that it is okay to ask for help.
What signs do you think parents should look for if their child is struggling to regulate their emotions? Whether they know, like, okay, this is a legit kind of temper
Mhm,
tantrum versus maybe this is something a little bit more. How do you have them
mhm.
differentiate? Are there any
Yeah.
like kind of telltale signs?
I think maybe age would play a part in that. I think, if we're still seeing tantrums going on in upper elementary, that might be something to look into and to go seek support for. I think, again, reaching out to your pediatrician is really important and sharing those concerns. If you have a gut feeling, and I always say, trust your gut feeling, right?
Hmm.
If you're a mom and you see something off, believe
Yeah.
yourself and go ask um, someone who specializes in that, and I think that's really important.
And you deal with kiddos on a day-to-day basis. What's your age range, and what have you learned from just your role and
Oh,
being Mrs. Giusti?
they oh my gosh, these kids, they teach me every single day. They're my teachers. I go to school to learn. I'm just kinda
Hmm.
here to hang out, you know? I'm
Aren't they
like
fun? And
I'm
kids,
the lifelong student.
kids are
I'm here
gossiping.
with
They
my
say
notebook.
crazy stuff. I bet you hear the
Oh
craziest
my
stuff.
goodness. Oh, I gotta tell you this. Okay, so I have this Post-it on my wall. I'm gonna get it real quick.
Yeah.
This, first grader I worked with, she goes, "Miss Giusti, I have something that I need to teach you that my mom taught me, and it helps calm me down."
Oh,
And she goes with her hands and she goes, "Peace begins within me." This is from a
wow.
6-year-old. I said, "Whoa, what?" And,
Wow.
we got into the conversation of, "When do you use this and how does it calm you?" And I said, "I need to write this on a Post-it on my wall, and this is what I'm going to use for the rest of the year for me." So I think it's really cool that we learn from our kids too. They are brilliant. They
Hmm.
know so much. And I work with kids aged 4 to 12 here, pre-K through 5th grade at our school. And it is just the things they say and do astound me daily.
Hmm.
And I think as adults, we need to take more time to listen to our kids because I think as we grow up, we are we're kind of, I don't technical terms, smushed into a box that we have to fit in. And
Hmm.
they're still using their imagination. They still have this freedom to express themselves and be themselves. And I think we adults need to take lessons from them and learn how to do that a little bit more.
100% agree with that. And
Mhm.
its peace begins within me.
Isn't that incredible?
It's so
Yeah,
simple. I'm gonna be saying that at work. Peace begins.
I know. I'll send you the Post-it.
Please do. Yeah, I'm going to have to write that down. What's something that you've really seen work? Maybe thinking back where there was a
Mm.
moment where a parent's support really helped a child break through emotionally.
Mhm. The number one thing that I can say is listening to hear, not to respond. That's something that I have held true for the years I've been here. when we let kids speak, they feel respected and they're going to speak more. And I think what's really important for us to realize is that kids process in silence. So oftentimes in westernized society, we want to fill quiet with noise, right? We
Mm-hmm.
always want to talk, and we always, well, we might get uncomfortable if it's quiet. But if you just sit there and you say to a child, you don't have to tell me what's wrong right now, but when you're ready, I'm here. That's going to open the door to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when hands are busy, kids speak more. You
Mm.
would be amazed of what I've heard over the sand table and a pile of Legos. But being that adult that plays with a child is so important because they see you as safe,
Mm-hmm.
someone they trust. And then when they're having a moment, they know you're someone they can go to. And that's what I found has been really beneficial, just that connection. And I tell families too, I say, make time to play together, make time to build connection so they know they can come to you when they are feeling like they need support and they might not be able to control um, the situation they're in at that moment.
And if it gets to a point where maybe the families do have to bring in outside help or a third party, what advice would you say for families looking for finding that right person that can help their family, their child? Because they are
Mm-hmm.
the expert in that field, but a lot of times it has to kind of be that right fit both ways.
It does. And it's okay to switch. If you feel like someone is not the right fit for your child, that's okay. It's okay to say that to your therapist, and it's okay for them to refer to another person. And I think people just get afraid of maybe they don't want to hurt someone's feelings or they don't want to make someone feel bad. But the therapeutic relationship only works when there's a relationship, right?
Yeah.
So if it's not working, it's okay to say something. And that's important to know.
What's one thing you wish every parent knew when it comes to just, raising emotionally healthy kiddos?
Hmm. I think it's important to say things like, I'm here. It's okay to cry.
Mm.
Not to say get over it because it's not our experience, it's theirs. It
Mm-hmm.
might seem like not a big deal to us, but at that moment, whatever the situation is a big deal to your child. And I think we need to take the time to really listen to that and really, that's also another educational piece when we talk about, is this a big reaction to a small problem? That's a conversation that you can have with your child. It's important to teach them how to use I statements. I feel because, and that is a really big communication piece for both parent and child. And I think just practicing that really helps in that dialogue of addressing feelings and just addressing the fact that it's okay to have feelings.
Yeah, and if people are listening to this podcast and maybe they are that parent that's like, get over it, stop crying, calm down, but
Mhm.
it's resonating with them, what can
Mhm.
they do to like just start putting one foot in front of the other? Because it's not going to obviously happen overnight, and the kid might be like, well, wait,
Right.
you used to be
Hard.
like getting on my case. So how do you kind of make that transition? And I guess it's never too late too. Maybe their kiddos are a little bit older.
Mm-hmm. Just practice. And like I say, practice when everyone's calm. And
Mm-hmm.
even bringing awareness to, especially if it's an older child, like, I've noticed that I've been a little harsh when it comes to this type of situation. I'm trying to work on myself. So let's work on it together. And then you're working on how to deal with different situations together. And I think
Yeah.
that's an important conversation to have too. And how that important is that? That's going to build more trust and connection as well.
And the power of the apology, as a parent, sometimes like we've been frustrated, irritated. I'm guilty of it. And I've, snapped at my
Oh, me
daughter. We're
too.
trying to get out the door. But I know
Yeah.
coming back, I've said, hey, mommy had nothing to do with you. And you could just
Mhm.
instantly see that she's like, oh, okay. That, again, back to them being resilient, but just speak to,
Yeah.
the power of apology and accountability on the parent side to the kids too.
Mhm. Yeah, and one of the things that I've been taught is to always say, "Do you forgive me?" Because that's giving
Mm.
them the permission to forgive you. Because I'm sorry is still kind of, I don't want to say self-centered, but it's just coming from you. But if
Ah,
you forgive, do you forgive me? You're giving them the power to forgive. And that's pretty powerful. And I think it's important too not to use blaming language when you apologize. For example, that would be, do you forgive me, but you were acting out of control?
ah.
Like it's still, that
The
doesn't do
but.
anything. That's not really an apology. Yeah.
Yeah.
So make sure not to use but dot 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 after your apology, because that could open a whole other can of worms. So giving the power of accepting that apology is important. Do you forgive me? And that's something that I was taught a long time ago, and it just kind of stuck.
And I imagine too, these tools go a long way, not just with kiddos, like parent to child, but in relationships, in friendships,
Mhm.
workplace relationships. You can, I imagine, take some of these same tools, because there's people that aren't, emotionally healthy too, in some of those instances.
Absolutely. I teach the same presentations I do with children to families as well. I think it's all important. I think everyone needs to be on the same page with how to communicate. We need to listen to hear and not listen to respond.
All great tips. I've been writing some stuff down as you go. It's wonderful. I always love to kind of end the podcast with giving my guests a final thought, final say, or any advice or things that you feel is on your heart that you would like to share in regards to this
Oh,
topic, or just in general.
yeah. I think as parents, it's important that we take care of ourselves. I think it's important that we carve out some time in our day to regulate ourselves so we could be there for our child, or we could be there for our partners, kids we work with, adults we work with. It's such a cliche saying that you can't pour from an empty cup, but I think it's
Hmm.
really true. I think we need to take care of ourselves. And when I talk about self care, I don't talk about just taking a bath or going to a movie by yourself. It has to be part of your daily routine. It has to be something you fit into your day. So, this is my time to focus on myself so I could be more present for my child when I'm spending time with them. And that's something that I really want to put out there, because I think we live in such a fast paced world. We're forgetting to take care of ourselves, and we need to, because how do we take care of our little people if we can't take care of our own person?
And resources, are there any like special books or, links or podcasts, aside from ours, the parenting one, just that
Yes, of
people
course.
people can, that you find are great resources or good starting points?
Yeah. The state of Alaska Education Department deed has put out a framework. It's the trauma toolbox, the toolkit, trauma toolkit. And it has so many great resources in it for families and educators. It's on their website, the Alaska State Department of Education website. And I just urge everyone to look at that. So many professionals took a lot of time to develop that. And the resources in it are amazing. I use it daily. I send it out to our whole district at the beginning of the year. There's just a lot of good links and resources in that. A resource I really like to use a lot is understood.org.
Hmm.
That has a lot of great resources for dealing with, does my child have ADHD? Does my child have any other things that I should be aware about? What are some strategies I could use? What's the difference between an IEP and a 504, which is language that's really confusing sometimes if you're not in the education world. I really enjoy the Child Mind Institute. I think that's a really good resource on the internet. And I know right now, too, our state developed, I wish it's the 907 navigation app. I'll have to send you the link
Okay.
separately. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's a great app for your phone that has so many resources statewide for families that has to do with housing, food bank, resources for pediatricians, mental health. It's a really great tool that was just developed and I think launched in November.
Oh, some good resources there. So yeah, people
Yeah.
pause, rewind back, and get some of that stuff. Well, it was really wonderful to talk with you, just from your profession, but also just mom to mom. That's why I love
Yeah.
doing these podcasts. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you so much. This has been such a joy. It's such a pleasure. And it's the last 2 weeks of school now. So I think I
Yeah.
have 3 more beach days to attend today and a presentation tonight.
Well, there you go. Enjoy your summer. Well deserved. You deserve it. And I want to say thank you all, too, for listening and watching another episode of Parenting in the Far North. Don't forget to like and subscribe.